What if you could talk to cheese, ride a unicorn to the moon, or have a dance-off with a dinosaur? Welcome to What If World, a storytelling podcast for kids, where the only limit is your imagination. Each week, Mr. Eric and his friends answer your questions with thoughtful, original, and hilarious stories.
What if trees became robots?
What if a dragon was allergic to gold? Check out What If World, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Warning, may cause you to giggle until you pop.
Hey grown-ups, exciting news. We've got another live Girl Tales event coming up. Come join us in person for our Women's History Month event in Brooklyn. It's on Sunday, March 23rd at 12 p.m. at 304 Bond Street. Your Tailblazers will have the chance to get crafty with Women's History Month themed arts and crafts, hear an exclusive new Girl Tale story, and create a brand new tale with us. Tickets are $25 per person and spots are limited. Grab yours now at girltalespodcast.com/events. I can't wait to see you there. That's girltalespodcast.com/events.
Hey Tailblazers, I'm Abby and this is Girl Tales.
A kids podcast packed with girl power and stories where every child's voice matters. I'd like to send a very special shout out to Nico and Mina and wish a very happy 7th birthday to Afton in Salt Lake City, Utah, Mara, and Kiara New. I'd also like to wish a happy birthday to Sasha in Coolum Beach, Queensland, Australia. Kiara, Mara, Sasha, Afton, Nico, and Mina, thank you all so much for listening to Girl Tales. Now, on to our episode. This is Amalia Short Takes Time to Look at a Flower. Enjoy! I'd like to tell you about a friend of mine, Amalia Short, the prominent painter who has helped her neighbors in Freshwater with their painting needs and has many of her own works hanging in the Freshwater Museum. This story is about a time when something magical happened to Amalia. Amalia Short was standing in front of a deep red canyon in the desert outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico. She was staring deep into the crack between two towering rocks, looking for the source of what sounded like speaking rocks. Just a moment ago, Amalia was wiping tears away from her eyes, and there had been a brush of wind. But instead of a whistle or a breeze, she heard the wind say, "You have time. You have time to look at a flower." Amalia was dumbfounded. You'd think it'd be frightening to hear the wind between rocks tell you a command like that. But for some reason, Amalia felt comforted by it. She had no idea what it meant, but something in her heart told her to listen. Then, from out of the canyon, appeared a small woman with jet black hair walking toward her, holding her weight on a tall wooden tree branch as she went. Again, none of this frightened Amalia. The woman came nearer and nearer, and soon enough she could hear that it wasn't the wind speaking to her, but instead, this woman was saying hello. "Hello, Amalia. I am glad you are finding a moment here to take your time." A few days before this, Amalia Short and her parents had come to Santa Fe for her Aunt Rosa's funeral. Her aunt had moved to New Mexico years before, and Amalia loved visiting her there. Amalia and Rosa would walk through the desert and look at trees and flowers and the vast space of New Mexico together. They even once visited the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum and slowly took in all of the paintings. Georgia O'Keeffe was a famous artist who loved painting the rocks, flowers, and skies that she saw when she visited and lived in New Mexico. Many had described her as the mother of American modernism because her paintings were of objects we know from reality, but she painted them as if they were much bigger or grander and full of magic and awe. Amalia's Aunt Rosa loved to say that a flower or rock painted by Georgia O'Keeffe might look more like a heart or the feeling of being loved than an ordinary flower outside her window. Amalia never really knew what she meant by that. How did an object look like the feeling of being loved? But she knew that this meant something to her aunt, and so she felt confident repeating it. Both Amalia and her aunt loved imagining what Miss O'Keefe would have painted as they took walks through the open space in New Mexico. "That rock looks particularly like it deserves to be blown up on a large canvas," her Aunt Rosa would say. "Maybe if Georgia were here now, she'd come back again and again for this tree or that cactus." Or she'd muse, "That cloud there can't be real. It must be painted by Georgia." This visit, though, was not one Amalia was looking forward to. Both her mom and dad seemed worried and scared, and Amalia didn't want to let them know she was worried and scared too. They were already burdened with the funeral, so it wasn't the right time to tell them that she wasn't ready to go herself. Instead, she stayed quiet and hoped that seeing her aunt's home would make her feel better. The trip to New Mexico was full of business. Her parents had to drive around everywhere to pick things up or drop them off. They kept saying that there was so much paperwork to finish, or things to sign, or details to complete. Amalia had no idea why any of this was so important. Both of their phones kept ringing, and when they weren't on calls, they were on their computers. Weren't they there to visit her aunt for the last time and to say goodbye? Why was there so much work to be done, and why did it feel like it had to happen right this minute? Couldn't any of them slow down and sit or take a break and be quiet? They didn't even have time to visit Aunt Rosa's house until after the funeral. The funeral itself had been busy too. So many adults talking over each other or not talking at all, just staring at the floor. Sometimes an adult would grab her mother and pull her into a deep hug, and they'd whisper to each other and walk away. Finally, when it was over, they would go to her Aunt Rosa's house, and things might feel a bit more normal. When they did get there, Aunt Rosa's house was quiet, but not quiet in the way Amalia had been hoping for. It felt like there wasn't stillness, but instead it felt empty. The house wasn't warm like so many visits before. Usually she'd walk through the door and she could smell food from the kitchen. Sometimes banana bread from the oven or a fresh salsa Aunt Rosa was roasting would waft in and say hello. And right behind it would be a huge bear hug. Aunt Rosa would always get her messy with whatever was still on her apron. But today, there was no smell at all. Not even a smell of the oils that her aunt used to wear, or the smell of the Himalayan salt lamp that would glow in the corner. Today, it was almost like all of the smells had been sucked out of the entire home. Amalia felt overwhelmed. Seeing her aunt's house somehow made her feel worse, and she was scared that nothing could make her feel better. At the end of Aunt Rosa's entranceway was a painting that Amalia had made of her favorite tree in freshwater. It was the tree in her backyard that had mossy green bark and would bloom purple flowers in the summer. She made the painting to share the view that she loved with Aunt Rosa, and her aunt had in turn painted a landscape of red mesas outside her back door. She said this was the view she looked at while she cooked. They both wanted to share their favorite views to stay connected when they were far from each other. Seeing her own painted tree made her miss her aunt even more. She immediately felt like crying, but because her mother was also standing still in the room, she held her tears back. She asked if she could go outside, and without waiting for an answer, she darted out the back door. Now, Amalia was standing there at the same canyon from the painting that hung over her bed in her room back in Freshwater. It was almost dusk now, and the shadows were stretching long across the rocks, turning the reds into purples and the greens from the bushes into blues and grays. And in front of her was this mysterious woman, glowing from the pink of the settling sun. Hello, Amalia. I'm glad you are here taking your time to rest. Amalia was confused. Where had this woman come from, and how did she know her name? Was she a friend of Aunt Rosa? She wondered and found herself asking out loud.
Did you know my aunt?
The woman responded. I did. She and I used to stand here together staring at the same canyon. One day she even sat out here for hours and took time to paint it. Amalia got excited.
I know! She made that painting for me. I have it at home.
The woman spoke again. That's a very special painting, isn't it? Are you also an artist?
I am. Well, sometimes. I mostly paint all of my favorite places in the town where I live.
I always said that returning to a favorite spot to draw it or paint it would make sure that I could really see it.
My aunt always said that. She said to really see something, it takes time.
Yes, almost like to make a friend takes time. I think your aunt and I would agree.
Well, did agree. She's gone now.
I'm sorry to hear that. I have a feeling she's still here, somewhere. Maybe in the rocks and trees she stood with for so long. And maybe she's even back in freshwater, in the spaces where you think about her so much, and remember her.
I used to remember her by her smell, but today, I can't smell her. Not even in her home.
Maybe that's true today, but might not be true next week. What about here? If you stop and breathe in and look at this space your aunt thought worthy of capturing in a painting for you, what about now? Can you remember her? Amalia took in the view. The rocks in front of her looked old and wise. At the tips, they were rounded like cones, and the sides of the stone looked layered, like a castle made from wet sand dripped into a pile, or a lopsided cake falling into itself. She looked and breathed in. And now she could hear her aunt laughing, pointing out the flower poking out of a cactus, proving that spikes can have beauty.
I can!
It was getting colder out now as the sun kept setting. She thought of her mother back in the house.
I wish I could tell my mom that she's not really gone and make her feel like it was true. I feel like there are so many different things that I want to say to her, but she won't stop moving, and I don't think I know how to say any of it.
The woman spoke. When I was your age, I never understood why people moved so quickly and never really stopped. Because of that, I made it my life's practice to find ways to help us all slow down. I tried to paint objects that I saw again and again and tried to play with their shapes and their colors to make it impossible to not see them. If a flower is as large as the wall in front of you, maybe you will take the time to see all of it. Or if the clouds I painted looked to you like stepping stones, maybe you would stop to notice them next time. A lot of people have a lot of words, but I never felt like there was much I could say. So I tried to paint it. Amalia had an idea. Maybe tomorrow, her and her mom could sit out here and make their own paintings of these canyons. Maybe that way they both could take a break from all of their fear of the funeral, but also in a space that her aunt loved. Maybe then they could talk without talking. Amalia was going to tell the woman her idea, but when she looked up, she was gone. The canyon was blue now, and the wind had gone. She looked into the space between the rocks where she would surely see her retreating back into the space she came from, but there was no sign of anyone or anything moving. The whole space was still. Amalia suddenly worried that her mother was looking for her, so she ran back across the dusty ground to Aunt Rosa's back door. She slid it open and saw her mom standing still in the kitchen. They both hugged each other, and she could hear her mom quietly crying over her head as she held her close into her chest. The next day, Amalia and her mom went out to the canyon with her aunt's easels and painted their own versions of the rocks. They spent the whole morning and afternoon there together. They wore big sun hats and drank pitchers of water and iced tea. By the end of the day, they each had finished paintings of Aunt Rosa's favorite view. Amalia had thought she would see the woman again, maybe later in the day walking by, but she didn't return. As they were packing up, though, she turned around quickly when she was certain she could hear someone say, "I don't think those rocks could possibly be real. They must be painted by Georgia." But when she looked back, there wasn't anyone there, just the glowing rocks against a pale blue sky and a few green bushes rustling in the wind. That was Amalia Short Takes Time to Look at a Flower, written by Harry Poster, with help from the members of the Girl Tales Club: Clara, Greta, Julie, Nettie, Jojo, Reid, Olive, Helena, and Josie. If your Tailblazer would like to join the Girl Tales Club, head to patreon.com/girltales and help us with our next Girl Tales story. This episode was produced by Megan Bagala.
Performed by Livi Hollins and Rebecca Cunningham. Executive produced by Rebecca Cunningham.
Girl Tales is a Cordelia Studios production. Grown-ups, you can get access to ad-free episodes of Girl Tales, as well as a range of other shows for the kids in your life by subscribing to Starglow Plus on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to hear me narrate the original stories of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, or Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, head to patreon.com/girltales and join Team Sunnybrook or above. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, if you loved this story, share it with a friend. Oh, and remember, I believe in you.
There's a hill and a road and a path where I know you must go. Through the sun, wind, rain, or snow. But wherever you venture, you can always come home. 'Cause I trust your heart, I trust my heart, and I trust your mind, I trust my mind, and I trust the friends, I trust the friends I know you will find o'er the hill and on the road. So off you go. And remember, I believe in you.
Starglow!
Hey grown-ups, have your Tailblazers always wanted to be a part of the story-making process here at Girl Tales? Here is their chance. We are officially launching the Girl Tales Club. As a club member, your Tailblazers will get exclusive invites to live virtual sessions where I will read brand new Girl Tales stories that no one has ever heard before. These will be rough drafts, so to speak, and anyone who is a Girl Tales Club member can provide us with their feedback. It might shape the final draft of the story. Plus, they'll get to meet other Tailblazers. You can also add on the Girl Tales Club starter pack. It's packed with goodies like a vintage book of fairy tales, a notebook, stickers, and more to really kickstart their storytelling journey. Sign your Tailblazer up for the Girl Tales Club for just $7 a month at patreon.com/girltales today. That's patreon.com/girltales.